When Star Wars Outlaws launched in August last year, I came away from the experience not being able to recommend it. Between the disastrous technical state of the game, shallow combat experiences, baffling design choices, and a disappointing middle third of the main story that was owed to Ubisoft's non-linear structure, Outlaws was a frustrating experience. Well, how is it now, here in 2025? Star Wars Outlaws is not what you'd associate with a typical post-launch experience for a single-player game. It's received 2 story pack DLCs focused around Lando and Hondo, sure, but more importantly, received several overhauls relating to the game's combat and core systems. And as a result, Star Wars Outlaws is not the same game as it was when it first launched. So now that the second and potentially final DLC has come out for the game, where are we at now? Do I now recommend it? Let's get into it. I've had quite a unique experience with Outlaws in that I initially completed the game and its first DLC. Unfortunately, my computer went bust, Ubisoft saves are stored locally, so I had to recomplete the final third of the base game and the first DLC all over again before starting the second. Now, while that was a pain in the ass for me, on the flip side, what this did was highlight just how much the overhauls had actually impacted the core experience here. To the point where Outlaws doesn't feel like a different game, but it definitely acts like it. Upon playing the second DLC, I encountered a more thrilling chase in the opening 30 minutes of my playtime than I did in my previous 50 hours of the game. Outlaws is built on the premise that if you're willing to take the risk, the galaxy is full of opportunity. The problem was, in Outlaws, there was either no risk or no reward. I'd infiltrated an Imperial camp, got spotted and was immediately hunted by the Empire. Prior to any updates, the following would have happened. Enemies would have very simplistic combat, they wouldn't react to certain weak point hits, and when being chased on the bike, I would have to just drive around in circles until my Deadeye ability had filled up fully so I could shoot the scout troopers on the speeders, which would then change my camera angle, couldn't see where I'd go in, I'd smash into something and fall off. Then I'd make my way to an Imperial terminal to remove my wanted status. What I mean by that is, sure, there was risk, but there was very little tools to make an encounter engaging and fun. But after all these updates in this encounter were marked by the Empire, I kill a stormtrooper on the way out, I grab his blaster, which I can now holster, couldn't do that before, fight my way into a station, realise I've been marked by the Death Troopers, meaning I have to go to a Death Trooper camp to remove that status. Within seconds, 2 Imperial garrisons show up outside the station that I'm camped in. So I make a dash from a speeder using the holstered weapon that gives me more firepower than before, and now I'm being chased by scout troopers on the speeders. But after the update, you can now free aim and shoot speeders without your ability. I lose the people on speeders, I get my way to the Death Trooper camp, and again I've got another gun that is holstered that I picked up on my way out, which means I can now deal with the Death Troopers a lot better than just with my regular blaster. The point I'm making here is, I'm now telling stories in this Outlaws universe. I didn't have these memorable unscripted moments before. Therefore, in order to re-review Star Wars Outlaws, we need to know what's changed since launch. There are no more forced stealth scenarios giving player agency in how they want to tackle each situation. Combat has been overhauled in that enemies now have weak points, and there is greater strategy to each combat encounter. You have the ability to pick up and holster the 2-handed weapons, which you could not do before. You can free aim while mounted on a speeder. They've added new contracts to complete of varying difficulty, new systems to overhaul starfighter modification that add passive bonuses, a variety of additional bounty quests to complete, and whilst all of this sounds simple and straightforward, what it does is it transforms Star Wars Outlaws close to its original vision. What has always been a strong asset of Outlaws is the core cast of characters present in the game. Good Star Wars experiences are built upon great crews, and K, Nix and ND5 also fit that glove. It wasn't until finishing the second DLC I realised just how much I really do like the main characters here. The relationship between K and Nix is one that anybody with a lot of love for their pet can resonate with. A friend and part of the family. There's a moment in the game where Nix is taken away from K, and you can feel that desperation and love for Nix.
No,
What the hell are you doing?
it's yours.
Ow! Let go of me! Yes!
In a universe that is full of loyal companions, are loved by fans, Nyx instantly slots in as yet another one. Of course, ND5 also brings a lot to this game. I've said it a billion times, but a commando droid in a trench coat, I mean, come on, that's a bit of a cheat code. What's more disappointing though is that just how little we get ND5 in actual missions. While Nyx is a great tool to use to distract enemies, ND5 is actually in very few missions, and it sucks because one of the missions that he's actually in was locked behind some kind of an Ultra Edition or pre-order bonus for the game. Most of ND's character work is done via comms and cutscenes, or the final third of the game. And it's great character work, but a character that's so integral, to be sat on the sidelines too often, feels like a miss. I said at the start that one of my disappointments with this game was that middle third. And despite the work that these patches have done on a gameplay front, there's no patching that non-linear structure. It happened again in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but Ubisoft's willingness to give player choice and to tackle things in any order you want doesn't work for me here. It's only blatantly obvious because when it all comes together in the game's final third, and all these characters that you've been recruiting finally interact, it's only then on a narrative front that the game starts to fire on all cylinders. And you think to yourself, why did it take this long? Hayes' Journey is one that I've always enjoyed, and there are some cool parts in that middle third of the game, but when you do these quests in any order, nothing of significance can really happen. No big interactions, and as a result, I don't really have fond memories from that middle third of the game. Luckily, I do like Kay as a protagonist, and I love this crew, but it's such a shame that that vision is only rarely utilised in the game's post-launch DLCs, especially so in A Pirate's Fortune. And these DLCs are now a part of the Outlaws package and deserve mentioning because those DLCs feel like the learning of the best of Outlaws in terms of the variety and activities that you do in each DLC. They are short story packs, so that's easier than a main campaign to add variety, but they are very well focused. Wildcard being centered around Sabak, and A Pirate's Fortune around treasure help fulfill the potential of a game about a smuggler in the Star Wars universe. Does it help that one is with Lando Calrissian and the other is with the best pirate in the galaxy, Hondo Ohnaka? Absolutely. But they feel like they're built on the foundations of what the base game delivered. Speaking of smugglers, Outlaws prided itself on its crime syndicate reputation system. This is a social system in the game where doing work for one clan would see you rise in their favourability, offering cosmetic rewards, access to unique contracts, gear and vendors. Often the game would have you pit two syndicates against each other, like killing some pikes for the huts, which I will gladly oblige, fuck the pikes. Or maybe you're stealing some data from the Ashiga clan for the Crimson Dawn. The system itself still doesn't quite hit. Yeah, it's cool sometimes going into hut territory, seeing that slimy little fuck jabber, getting some nice gear, or a mission is made easier because I need to go into Crimson Dawn territory and I'm on good terms with him, so I can waltz in without having to do any combat. Again, this vision feels evolved in the DLC. During an investigation zone, I could gain intel via flexing my status with that crime syndicate, which meant I could gather the players list without having to do the other sub-objectives. During A Pirate's Fortune, I flew into hut airspace without having to do combat because me and Jabba are good pals. It does mean to say that it feels more like a coating on the game than something I'm constantly feeling and dealing with the consequences of my choices. Sometimes you'll be chased down randomly, but I never felt harsh consequences from pissing off the pikes constantly. Of course, what builds on top of this is those contracts that I spoke about. These are endlessly repeatable contracts to pick up and complete in the game that will net you reputation for a clan. It can be fly into space and get this package, clear out a camp, and at the end of a contract you'll often have an opposing clan offer you another deal, leaving you a choice. You stick with the hut or you betray him for the pikes. In that way, Outlaws acts a little bit like a single player live service that you could just keep running these contracts if you want to. And the improvements that Massive have made as time has gone on with Outlaws adds a good amount of content even once those credits have rolled. Especially with those added in A Pirate's Fortune that not just increase the challenge, but also reward you in unique unlocks that can add passives to your ship. It is also possible to be on good terms with all of them, which is also partially why this system never feels overly punishing, and therefore of little consequence. Whilst Massive didn't quite deliver on the potential of the crime syndicates, what it did, and then some, was capture the feeling of scum and villainy and the original trilogy of Star Wars. I will stand by what I said at launch in that there is not a more immersive Star Wars game out there than Star Wars Outlaws. The feeling of entering a cantina of the most despicable people in the galaxy is nailed by Ubisoft Massive. You look to your left, there's this weird goofy band playing bangers in the cantina. You look to your right, and Mon Calamari's having a couple of scoops of his Trandoshan pal. There's sabacc tables everywhere, or a Rodian is pissed out of his head at the bar. It's just proper immersive scum and villainy stuff. And it's not just the cantinas, it's the space stations, it's the Dune Sea of Tatooine, the casino bars of Canto Bight, the frozen city of Kijimi, or you punch into hyperspace in the Trailblazer. Star Wars Outlaws is a masterclass in capturing the sound, visuals and feeling of Star Wars. And it's all accompanied with a terrific soundtrack from Wilbert Roger, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who did a phenomenal job of the score of Outlaws. I mentioned about it being a live service single player game, but I do like the ability to just boot the game up and play some high stakes sabacc, or bet on a race. It captures that underground world of Star Wars. It's something that a game can only accomplish. Sure, we see and spend time on Kijimi in The Rise of Skywalker, but spending hours exploring the planet in Outlaws adds a different experience. Another criticism that I mentioned at the top was that of the game's combat and stealth, in that it felt very shallow even if at times it was fun. Headshotting a stormtrooper was no different to hit him in the leg. Two-handed weapons felt pointless as a result of the old systems because why would I pick them up when I would have to drop them anyway? So all I used in the game were the same 3 modules of plasma, ion and power on Kay's blaster, but those felt poorly balanced. So for half of the game really, I didn't change any approach to combat. It was a real shame to me since this is Ubisoft Massive, makers of The Division, which has excellent third-person gunplay and combat. As a result of weak point additions, weapons can now be holstered, free aim on speeders, no forced stealth scenarios, and player choice in how to tackle a situation is more apparent in the game. There were multiple sections in my first playthrough that I stealthed my way through without getting detected, but now because I can holster weapons and whip them out at any point, there was a lot more variety. The stealth still feels shallow, but the combat does feel so much better, in its hit feedback and snappiness too. I said in my initial review combat was fun, but I never emphasised just how repetitive it felt. And it still does to a degree, but rebalancing the different modules you can place on Kay's blaster, and the more freedom granted by those two-handed weapons, were key to adding that feeling of variety. Despite Ubisoft being renowned for their stale tower structure of their open worlds, Outlaws from the get-go had an open world and progression approach that I personally like. You uncover the map just by exploring it. You progress your skill tree by meeting specialists in that field, like Lando, who by doing certain requirements and or having specific components, you can unlock extra skills in that specialist skill tree. So it's not just leveling up and putting skill points into things, it's going out and doing those things in the world. And these skills have a profound effect on how you engage in those scenarios. Kill 4 people at once with Adrenaline Rush, be able to target 6. Kill 6 people at once, be able to double target Death Troopers and higher ranked enemies. And get enhanced back to vials, more ways to cheat and manipulate a sabacc. The progression in Outlaws felt natural. You should just do things in the world, you'd explore, and you'd level up, enhancing that smuggler's journey. Exploration, I always felt was rewarding. Coming across a key part means that you can now slice into terminals quicker, or a blaster circulator that lets you craft that final upgrade to enhance your bolt blaster config. Upgrades felt meaningful in Outlaws. Their impact is felt in the duration of encounters and the willingness to go toe-to-toe with high rollers at sabacc, or approach combat in a riskier manner due to your increased health pool. It was always a joy to explore the cities and world in Outlaws because it could be a visual feast, a nod to the original trilogy, talking about events of the Clone Wars. Outlaws created worlds that I wanted to be immersed in. Everything that Outlaws does well in its base game is spotlighted in its DLCs. Both Wildcard and A Pirate's Fortune are full of variety, in gameplay terms, but also tonally. Wildcard is set aboard a cruise ship that is flying through hyperspace as a sabacc tournament unfolds, and that's a reminder of how cool Star Wars can be. The DLCs can afford to bounce around the different aspects of Star Wars gameplay of ship combat, sabacc and wildcard, puzzle solving in a pirate's treasure with Hondo, all while strengthening the bond and the relationships of the core cast. The DLCs act like extensions of the main game, but with the added flair of those post-launch updates to make them shine. It's here you feel the main impact of those upgrade paths, the added combat improvements, and not to mention more additions in a new ship that you can fly, added blaster modules, or the new locations that add a different dimension from the base game. For me, a pirate's fortune is a highlight for everything that Star Wars Outlaws excels at. Hondo is brilliant, the dynamic of K and ND5 is explored even further, extended gameplay variety, and that smuggler aesthetic in its setting. Two excellent standalone stories that left me wanting more in a good way. I did not recommend Star Wars Outlaws back in August of last year. When I look at Star Wars Outlaws today, I see a game that is closer to the vision originally intended. I see the foundation of a great Star Wars game here. No matter what though, Outlaws still feels very safe to me, very by the books. The motto of if you're willing to take the risk, I still feel the game is lacking of, despite those improvements. And speaking of those improvements, unfortunately you can't patch out an uninteresting middle third of the game, and you can't redo a base campaign to give the crime syndicate greater influence. As a result, Outlaws still has its problems, of course, but at the same time, you have to give credit where credit is due. It would be easy to just pump out the 2 DLCs and move on, but the work done by Ubisoft Massive to overhaul core aspects of Outlaws gameplay and systems, I think deserves recognition. What I think is more apparent to me is just how much I'd like to see Massive given the chance to make a sequel to Outlaws, whether that's with K, Nix and ND, or an entirely different crew. The foundation of Outlaws in its current format is so strong that with greater impact of their crime syndicate system, a more consistent dialed in story, and added depth to its combat and stealth, I think we could see something terrific. With the work they've done to create these immersive worlds, they have to get me know these characters so well, and the journey that we've gone on over the base game and DLC, I can't help but feel it would be a huge miss if that wasn't the case. To the point where the best game in many flagship franchises are the sequel, and Outlaws 2 I really feel could be that. I finished Star Wars Outlaws at launch frustrated because I wanted to love it as a Star Wars fan. I wanted more from it, and I still do. Yet, I do recommend this now. It evokes that feeling of Star Wars to me, of adventure, of companionship, of being goofy, or just being part of a crew. It's a substantial improvement over the game's launch, and the current state begins to realise the vision of what Outlaws could be, and perhaps one day, still can be. Particularly in its second DLC. The final verdict of Star Wars Outlaws is that now, finally, I have a good feeling about this. That's how I feel about Star Wars Outlaws. Let me know. Do you feel any different since launch? Have you played the DLCs yet? I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like is all I ask. It helps me out so much. And if you're after coverage of Star Wars game, you found yourself in the right place. News, reviews, guides, streams, the full shebang. So consider subscribing. All my socials are linked below. I hope you have a terrific day. Play games, get gains, and I will catch you in the next one.